Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. It's Freddie and
Hi everyone, good to see you
Mark.
again.
So we haven't been on the air in a little while, but there's been a lot of politics happening, so we had to get back on and give you our thoughts on it.
Well, we hope you liked our last episode with Kylie Tink. We really loved having her on, and I thought she was amazing.
Yeah, no, she was incredible. I mean, it's a really sad thing seeing her go, but at least we know that her replacement in Warringah, which is now our seat, obviously, is Zali Steggall, who's incredibly, um, you know, well
And
suited
we
for the role.
and we look forward to having Zali on, perhaps after the election.
And we'll talk a
And
bit more about the Australian election at
and
the end of the podcast.
Kylie is now a director of the Community Independence Project. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah. But let's get into what has happened in the last 24 hours, which is the passing of Pope Francis. So that's obviously had a huge effect on the international community. I think more than 1 billion people register as Catholic.
Oh, more than 1 billion, yes. I think
More
it's
than
more
1
like
billion.
2 billion or something.
But you can't say that, but more than 1 billion register officially as
And
Catholics.
having been brought up a Catholic myself, it's always a sort of sad day when a pope dies. It always seems very significant to me. And he was a great pope, Pope Francis. He was he was from Argentina, and he was really into liberation theology. And those who haven't come across that, that's the whole concept of uplifting people who are poor and disadvantaged and treating everyone equally. So it's a very Australian concept in a sense.
Very Australian concept. I mean, I don't know if I would say that necessarily. It's kind of a big claim to make. But yeah, I mean, that is in line with why he chose the name Francis, which is after St. Francis of Assisi, who was a saint who constantly worked his entire life to uplift the poor and make their circumstances better. So, his entire life he's shown this kind of dedication to helping the less privileged in our society.
And incredible that he should die on Easter Monday. It couldn't have been choreographed
Or poetic.
Better by the church if that had been the case. And very interesting that he just met J.D. Vance a few days ago, and of course the internet's going off with all these crazy themes around that concept of him having met him a few days before.
I mean, I think it's really interesting seeing the traditional and historical power of the church go up against this like new age force of Make America Great Again, of the MAGA, the MAGA cult, and seeing these two forces go up against each other and see what happens as a result of that. So we were talking about how obviously J.D. Vance did meet with the Pope the other day. And I mean, poor Pope having to spend some of his last waking moments in the presence of J.D. Vance, but that's all right. I think he probably dealt with it pretty well, probably got in a few hard-hitting comments before they said goodbye to each other. But I know there's been a horrific response from some people in the Republican Party. We were just hearing about Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene just tweeted something like, it's a great day for God. And let me get the exact quote. Today, there are major shifts in global leaderships. Evil is being defeated at the hand of God. So, like, the level of disrespect that it would take to say something so disgusting on such the day and the period of mourning of such a holy, important figure for the world and for billions of people is disgusting and a huge risk as well, considering the Catholic populations in the US. And
oh yes,
how probably many of them,
crazy.
Yeah, probably many of them do support Trump at this point in time.
Sure.
And the effect of her saying something like this is like unprecedented. So we'll see how
it's true.
that plays out.
And we were also discussing, it was amazing that Pope Francis had been calling a priest of the only Catholic church in Gaza, I think most days, and
every night,
and he got to know most of the parishioners. So an incredible example of his helping people in terrible situations and that sort of thing, and not forgetting them.
Definitely. I mean, some of the other things he didn't obviously completely break down barriers for women in the church. Otherwise, we would see women taking up far greater positions. But women do have the potential to take more leadership in the church than they did prior
Yes,
to his
absolutely.
appointment as Pope. So they have a lot more power, they have a lot more freedom. He's also appointed a lot of cardinals from Africa, from South America, from historically underrepresented areas of the globe. So that has continued to show his respect for all peoples of the world. And those are some of the major things he did. I'm not sure, can you think of any other?
Yeah, so I mean, the fact that he was the first pope from the southern hemisphere, from Argentina, was a change in itself. And yeah, just an incredibly impressive leader, and someone was a real great human being and didn't want all the trappings of the office. He simplified the cars that he used. Even his funeral will be more simple than previous popes. So a real example to the world of humble generosity and kindness. So I think it was very instructive, and it was interesting to see Anthony Albanese's press conference regarding the Pope's death, and was obviously emotionally impacted because he grew up a Catholic and felt deeply connected. And of course, given his Italian heritage and background with the church as well, very interesting.
It's very interesting, and it's also kind of wild to see. To say wild, I don't know if that's a very professional podcasting term, but it is wild to see the impact that the Pope did have over his time in, what would you say, in office?
Yes.
What would you phrase that? In office? So he's only really been there for around 10, 12 years.
10 years or so, yeah.
Around that. But he's had a huge effect. So obviously the nomination of the next Pope will also have a huge effect. And so that is being undertaken right now. I know that you were a big fan of the conclave. Do you want to do a short explanation on how the next Pope is
Oh, sure.
elected?
Well, if you haven't watched Conclave or read the book, you should do so. It's pretty fascinating because, of course, when the Pope dies, they seal his apartment with a red ribbon with wax seals, etc., so nobody can enter the room. And the popes always wear what's called the shepherd's ring, and that is destroyed soon after the Pope dies, because that used to be the seal on wax, etc., and his symbol of approval, etc. So as soon as the Pope dies, that's disposed of, cracked, taken off his finger and smashed, etc. And then, of course, all the cardinals from around the world are summoned to St. Peter's, and the funeral will be within a week or so, and the conclave has to happen within 10 to 15 days of the Pope's death. And the conclave is all the cardinals get together, and they're locked into the Sistine Chapel with really good Italian food, as you would expect, and wine, etc. They can't take any mobile phones in. There's a total media blackout.
I mean, I don't really think of cardinals as using mobile phones very much,
Sure
but
they
I mean,
do.
surely they
Sure
do.
And then they have multiple votes typically, and each time a vote is cast, they burn all the ballot papers, and then you can see the smoke coming up.
I think they prefer to just have one vote, and I've heard that it's meant to be within 2 days, and if the vote is successful, then
you don't need multiple votes.
Then they have this white smoke come through the chimney, and that signals to all the people waiting outside that they've chosen a successor. However, if they haven't found a successor, then they use
black smoke.
So that's how it works. Very, dramatic symbolism. Very typical of the Catholic Church. I'm not surprised that they have such a symbolic history and traditions.
It's great. And so there's, who knows, there's multiple candidates, some like Francis more liberal and some more conservative, etc. So it will be really fascinating to see who is chosen and what age they are, and what is their theological basis or strategy.
Yeah, definitely it will be, because as we've seen, some popes can remain in that position for up to 30 years. So the impact that that one can have being in that position for 30 years is gigantuan. So we're hoping and praying that, I mean, I'm actually not praying, I'm not Catholic, but we're hoping that it'll be someone who has a similar ideological purpose as Pope Francis did, because he was an inspiration to so many people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And Freddie, you just recently published your first official paper.
Yeah, a few weeks ago I published a paper, and we wanted to talk about this a little bit on the podcast, not just as a plug for me, but actually because I think it's a really important issue, everything that I talked about. So we wanted to get into that a little bit. I talked a bit about, so in the Democratic Republic of the Congo right now, there's a massive civil war going on. And it's interesting how we don't hear much about this in average media. I mean, I know that everyone's always saying that in Africa there's a ton of civil wars and human rights crises and the food security issues going on. But like, the fact of the matter is we should still be zeroing in on them as independent situations and examining why they're happening and the effect they're happening, because obviously they're as legitimate as other conflicts that are happening in Ukraine, etc., etc. So that's been going on for a while now. And yeah, they're experiencing one of the worst food crises in modern history. And it's been really horrific to see the level of sexual violence that's happening there. So that's what there's a trigger warning, that's what my article is about. And it talks about how militaries across the world use sexual violence as a tool, as part of their military strategy. It's not simply just a soldier.
Ad hoc thing.
Yeah, an ad hoc thing where a soldier goes off on his own and commits the act. It's more that military leadership are telling their soldiers to go off and commit the act in order to subdue the opponents and in order to really destroy their resilience. And we can see as well, so that's been happening a lot in Congo. It's known as the rape capital of the world, and it's been happening in like a few of the surrounding countries who are also involved in the conflict. And women are really the victims of this conflict. And when you look at the rest of the conflicts around the world, women are still the victims. We're always talking about the soldiers who are being injured. Even in Ukraine, we're always talking about the soldiers. But in fact, women are the ones whose lives are being destroyed as well.
And I think what I found interesting about Freddie's paper is the impact on the society of that. It's the destruction of people's morale and resilience, as you said. So it's a really long-term impact, and I've even seen it talked about in terms of Russia and Ukraine, etc., just destroying people's will and subjugating a population. And you can see why people use it as a terribly evil strategy, and one that's not spoken about very much.
No, definitely. And I mean, obviously there are international organizations which are aware that it's going on, but it feels like no modern national leader is really confronting it. I know Antonio Guterres has said that sexual assault itself destroys the fabric of communities, but those communities are not being made aware of it. It's all very hush-hush and left to continue. But we really need to, as the woke agenda continues to be criticized, we need to look at what else we have to protect going forward.
The real challenge is the people who have been raped, the women who have been raped, etc., they probably don't want to talk about it. And, in that scenario, this is the whole challenge of the whole thing, publicizing the thing and people being open and honest about it.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, but you shouldn't have to talk about it. I think we're in a space right now where everyone always wants proof.
Yeah.
But we have statistics and we have reports from quite a few different countries where Human Rights Commission as well, they have a great number of reports of sexual violence. They know that it's happening.
Right.
You don't need to get a first-hand account going into detail of what's happened. The person has said that it's happened. Right. And there's a certain point you just have to trust what they're saying and actually do something about it. I think there's a lot of excuses made, though, like that they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to confront it. But we know it's happening, so we can confront it now.
That's true. That's true. I think you got to raise awareness of these things. The challenge is the United Nations is under real threat of its whole existence, right?
Mm.
The whole cutting back of USAID and aid from the UK and other countries. Hopefully, Australia will keep its international aid going, and the likes of Japan and Canada, etc. But the whole United Nations operation is under huge stress,
Mm.
and whether it will survive in the form it is. So getting to this issue is really important, but is it on their priority list?
Well,
That's the challenge.
I think this is the question though. I think something like this has always been made like deprioritized. In every situation like this, someone has an excuse for why we can't focus on
Hmm.
it. We have to focus on this. We have to focus on this. We have to focus on these people who are being harmed in this area of the world, and then we can focus on women's rights. But I think the key part of that is it's women's rights that are being ignored.
Right.
If this was happening to everyone in the population, there was mass sexual assault of an entire population of a country, surely the UN would be doing something about it.
Uh, yes, in
But
past times,
don't you
yes,
think?
in
Like,
past times,
yeah,
but
no, I
not
know.
at the moment. They're just wondering whether they're going to be surviving.
But I think to remind the world
Yeah,
of the UN's importance and what they can do for us, they should be going even further
I agree, but
with the capacity they have. I know, but they're
the
limited
challenge
by their
is
funding.
Guterres. I hate to say it, being Portuguese as well, I don't think he's been the most effective head of the UN. Now, maybe he had a poison chalice, right, without funding, etc., but
Oh,
I don't think he's really done an
I
amazing
haven't
job.
thought that. That's interesting. That feels like quite a controversial opinion. Where did you
Oh,
hear this from?
oh no, I've just read about his ability to work with governments around the world, and you know, when I see him speak, he doesn't seem to have the gravitas I would have expected, like Kofi Annan used to have, who was the
Okay.
former head
Yeah.
of the UN.
No, that's really interesting. I need to look into that a bit more. But yeah, obviously we're going to see what happens with those organizations. And it's interesting to see something that was the United States baby, essentially,
Hmm.
is now being left to walk on its own and live on its own. And is it capable of that?
Same test for UN as the EU and other parts of the world having
No,
to
definitely.
stand on their own 2 feet. Shall we segue to the Australian election?
Yeah, let's get into that a bit. I mean, obviously, the Pope passing away did actually have quite an effect on the Australian election as well. You know, huge population of,
Well, they've paused the campaigning for today out of
yeah,
respect, right?
yeah. And I know that Dutton made a statement saying there'll be no political potlucking today. And then immediately after, obviously, Albanese paused his campaign as well. But there is still a debate going ahead this evening,
I believe, yes, there's a Channel 9
the third
debate.
debate. The third debate.
And I think the latest polls are that Labor is doing very well,
And they even
and
have a chance of forming a majority government at
yeah,
this point.
which is interesting. But polls are very unpredictable, and let's see. I think Albanese is being smart and saying, where we think it'll be very close, etc.
And the fact of the matter is, these polls were very similar to the 2019 elections. Obviously, Labor was not successful then. So
He was quoted on a podcast the other day saying that he thinks all the Teals will maintain their seats. This is what Albanese said. And this is the challenge for the coalition, right? Without winning back those seats, which used to be true Liberal seats, they've got to pick up the same number or more, many more seats in outer suburban areas, which is
yeah,
why they're doing the cut in the fuel excise.
and being so strong on crime
Yeah, and strong on
and
crime,
the
and they're
very
going to have a
high crime
defense.
rates in
They're
a
going
lot
to
of
have
those
a defense
communities.
announcement, so they'll probably spend quite a lot more on defense.
But I don't know about you. I think it's quite hilarious they're doing this defense announcement after polls have already, after voting has already opened,
Yeah, it seems a bit late.
early
They seem
voting.
rather chaotic, actually. The whole thing seems rather chaotic, their whole campaign scenario. And, the whole hybrid work or work from home. Jane Hume, the minister who suggested that in the first place, was quoted the other day saying, "Oh, it's still a good policy. The timing wasn't right." And so there's a lot of lack of discipline, I would say, in terms of their messaging, whereas the Labour Party seems to be very disciplined in terms of their messaging.
I mean, it's interesting because I can understand testing out policies, right, on the electorate and seeing how people respond, but
But
don't
not in an
test it out
election.
so close to the election. Testing out something so divisive is like a shocking thing to be
What
doing.
did you think about the whole Tanya Plibersek rift with Albanese? How she went to kiss him at the party conference and he pulled back.
I think as far as like PR disasters go, that is nothing in comparison to everything that's been
No,
happening
that's
with
true.
the Liberals recently. I even saw today that there was a Liberal rented promotional advertising truck that they were using in one of the electorates that crashed into one of the Australian Electoral Commission spaces. It crashed into it.
Really?
So there's this dramatic photo of Liberal advertising on this truck that is smashed into the very, the very structure of the Australian electoral system. It's like very symbolic. It's destroying the Australian
Yeah, no, you're
system.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hilarious. These are the moments of any election campaign. I think the other interesting thing was Jacinta Price, who's super popular amongst conservative supporters, etc. And she did the clangor of make Australia great again. And it was really interesting because Dutton didn't shut it down. He said to the press, "Oh, you can keep asking Jacinta questions." And she's really popular. So I thought it was a really bad strategic mistake on his part that, again, there's lack of discipline here, because
Lack of
they've
cohesion.
really been hurt by this association with Trump. And someone like that reminding Make Australia Great Again, that they're connected to
I
that,
mean,
it's
the
just the most
slogan is
terrible
already
thing.
terrible. Let's get Australia back on track. That just sounds like something the Republican Party came up with and then tossed aside before deciding on a much catchier phrase, Make America Great Again. Let's get Australia back on track. Even from a marketing perspective, doesn't have a ring to it. It just seems like a second-rate version of the American one.
Yeah.
So obviously they haven't really listened to the polls. They keep making mistakes, left, right, and center. I mean, with this Liberal truck crashing into the building, it reminds me of, when Dutton was doing that promotional shoot and he kicked a football into the
Oh, yes, the cameraman's head. Yeah.
the cameraman's head, and he has to go to hospital.
Just
and get
like
a few
Scott
stitches.
Morrison tackling the kid in the last campaign and knocking
Yeah,
the kid over.
yeah, exactly. So it's just been blow after blow. And
Anyway, but you can never, I predicted elections badly in the past, so, I don't
at least you're not a pollster. Be much worse if you're a pollster.
so certain about things. You never know what can happen in the last few weeks of
That's
the
true. But I think it's interesting to look at the fact that independents have been mostly taking the Liberal seats, right? And another Liberal seat seems like it's about to fall. And that's
Well, it'll be
Bradfield.
interesting. The question, yes, Bradfield, and the question is whether Dutton will keep his seat. So he's on a close margin, so that will also be interesting. And if you scale out, if Carney wins in Canada and Albanese wins, you could potentially say there's a real change in global politics, a swing back to liberalism and the left side of politics
The rise of middle powers.
in reaction to this whole Trump agenda. So
Yeah, definitely. And we'll see if these countries really step up, if Albanese gets a second term, if Australia and Canada are able to step up and replace the gap that America is leaving in the global landscape, global economy, more important.
And there's still craziness in terms of the financial markets. Trump is threatening to sack Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve. The whole bond market's in chaos because the rest of the world remembered that the US owes everyone else a lot of money, and China and Canada and Australia and Europe are supporting the US bond market. And this is the Achilles heel, and it could be terribly dangerous for the world financial system.
And I mean, you see the situation the US is in. They're blatantly criticizing the just deceased Pope. They are, JD Vance obviously had a meeting just before he died that doesn't spell good things for the Republican Party. The tariffs have been a complete disaster. The world is turning against them. Their bonds
Yeah.
crisis as well. I mean, it seems an impossible situation. I don't really know how they can come back from this. A global financial crisis is about to happen. I don't
I
think
hope
there's
not.
anything
I
that
hope
can
not. Let's
stop it.
see. Anyway, we will look forward to chatting with you next week. Hope you have a great week, and please remember to like and share our podcast with your friends.
Yes, please. And let us know
Bye.
if there are any topics you want us to go into because we love hearing from you. Okay, bye.
Bye.